Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Verba Podcast. We're really happy to have you with us today. If you're listening to this episode, there's a very high chance that you've experienced something frustrating while speaking English. I think today's topic is too real for English learners.
Very real. Honestly, when we chose this topic, I immediately thought, yes, this is something almost every learner struggles with. Because understanding English is one thing, but speaking it confidently is a completely different challenge.
Exactly. Today we're talking about how to stop translating in your head when speaking English. And if you've ever paused in the middle of a sentence because you were translating from your native language, this episode is for you.
Let's start with a simple situation. You're listening to English and you understand almost everything. You watch videos, listen to podcasts, maybe even read articles. But the moment you want to speak, your mind freezes. You start translating word by word and suddenly the sentence feels heavy and slow.
Yes, and this can be very discouraging. Learners often ask themselves, why can I understand English so well, but when I speak, I feel stuck? And the answer is not a lack of intelligence or effort. It's actually how the brain has learned the language.
Most English learners are taught to translate from the very beginning. We learn vocabulary by matching words with our native language. We learn grammar by comparing structures. So naturally, when we speak, the brain follows the same path. Native language first, English second.
And that's important to say. Translating is not a mistake at the beginning. It's normal. It's part of the learning process. The problem starts when learners think translating is the final stage of speaking English.
Exactly. Translation is useful for understanding, but it's not efficient for communication. Real communication happens when you think directly in English, even if your English is simple.
I think many listeners feel embarrassed when they translate in their head. They feel slow. They feel like others are judging them. And sometimes they stop speaking altogether because they don't want to sound awkward.
And that silence can be dangerous for learning, because the more you avoid speaking, the stronger the habit of translating becomes. Speaking fluently is not about knowing more words. It's about training your brain to respond naturally.
So in this episode, we want to break this problem down clearly. Not just what it is, but why it happens and how to work on it in a realistic way.
To really understand how to stop translating in your head, we first need to understand why the brain does it in the first place. Translation is not a weakness. It's actually a sign that your brain is trying to protect you. When you learned your first language, your brain built strong, automatic pathways. That language feels safe, fast, and familiar. So when you start learning English later in life, your brain naturally uses your native language as a bridge. It says, let me think here first, then I'll move to English. This happens especially when you feel pressure, when you're nervous, or when you're afraid of making mistakes.
Yes, and this is exactly why translating becomes much stronger in stressful situations. When someone asks you a question suddenly, your brain doesn't focus on fluency or confidence. It focuses on survival. It wants to avoid embarrassment. It wants to avoid mistakes. It wants to protect you. In that moment, your brain looks for the fastest and safest option. And that option is always your first language. Your native language feels secure because it's automatic. You don't have to think about grammar, vocabulary, or sentence structure. Everything is already there. English, on the other hand, still feels uncertain. Even if you understand it well, your brain hasn't fully trusted it yet. So under pressure, the brain does what it's designed to do. it returns to what it knows best. This is why many learners say, "I can speak better when I'm alone," or "I speak better when I have time to think." Stress changes everything. It speeds up your thoughts and increases fear, and fear strengthens the habit of translation. Understanding this is important because it removes shame. Translating under pressure doesn't mean you're bad at English. It means your brain is reacting normally. The goal is not to fight this reaction, but to train your brain gradually so that English also becomes a safe place, even in stressful moments.
The problem is not translation itself. Translation is actually a normal stage in learning a language. The real problem is that translation slows down communication so much that speaking stops feeling natural. When you translate, speaking becomes mechanical rather than expressive. You first think of an idea in your native language. Then you translate it word by word into English. After that, you start checking grammar in your head. You ask yourself if the tense is correct, if the sentence sounds polite enough, or if the word choice is right. All of this happens in just a few seconds, but for the brain, it's a lot of work. By the time you're finally ready to speak, the conversation has already moved on. The moment has passed. Someone else has spoken, or the topic has changed. This can feel embarrassing and discouraging, especially when you knew what you wanted to say. Over time, this experience creates deep frustration. Learners start to label themselves as bad speakers or slow thinkers, even though they understand English very well. This belief slowly damages confidence. But the truth is much simpler and much kinder. The brain is not weak. It's overloaded. It's trying to do too many tasks at the same time: translating, analyzing, correcting, and speaking. Fluency doesn't come from doing more thinking. It comes from doing less. And that's why learning to reduce translation is not about intelligence. It's about retraining the brain to communicate more efficiently.
And this overload can slowly create silence. When speaking feels stressful and exhausting, many learners begin to avoid it. They prefer not to speak at all rather than struggle in front of others. Silence starts to feel safer than making mistakes. At least in silence, there is no judgment, no interruption, and no embarrassment. But this silence comes with a cost. The more you avoid speaking, the less practice your brain gets. And the less practice your brain gets, the harder speaking becomes. It turns into a cycle. Fear leads to silence. Silence leads to less confidence, and less confidence leads to even more fear. Many learners don't realize that fluency is not built by thinking harder or preparing perfect sentences in advance. Fluency is built through repetition, exposure, and natural response. The brain needs experience, not perfection. When you speak, even imperfectly, you are teaching your brain how to react in real time. You are training it to respond to meaning, not grammar rules. Every attempt, even a broken sentence, is a step forward. Silence may feel comforting in the moment, but it doesn't help fluency grow. Speaking does, slowly, imperfectly, and consistently. Fluency comes from allowing yourself to speak before you feel ready, not after everything feels perfect.
One of the most important mindset shifts is this: stop thinking in words and start thinking in meaning. When native speakers talk, they don't translate or analyze grammar. They think in ideas, emotions, and intentions. For example, instead of thinking, "How do I say this sentence in English?" ask yourself, "What do I want to say?" Then use the simplest English you know to express the idea.
Simple English is powerful, and many learners underestimate this. There is a common belief that fluency means using advanced vocabulary, long sentences, and complex grammar. Because of this belief, Learners often wait until they can say something perfect before they speak at all. But real fluency is not about complexity, it's about clarity. Fluency means that your message is understood easily. It means your ideas move smoothly from your mind to the listener, without long pauses or fear. Short, simple sentences spoken confidently are far more effective than long, perfect sentences spoken with hesitation. When you use simple English, your brain works faster. You spend less time translating, less time checking grammar, and more time communicating meaning. Native speakers do this all the time. They don't always speak in perfect or complicated sentences. They speak naturally, clearly, and directly. That's what makes communication feel alive. When learners allow themselves to use simple English, something important changes. Confidence grows, speed improves, fear decreases, and with time, complexity comes naturally, not because you forced it, but because your brain became comfortable using the language. Simple English is not weak English. It is strong English. It is the foundation of real fluency.
This might sound strange, but limiting your vocabulary can help you stop translating. Choose a small group of common words and expressions and force yourself to use only those in conversation. When your brain knows it doesn't have many options, it stops searching and translating. It starts responding faster.
This approach is especially helpful for beginners and intermediate learners, because at these stages, the brain is still building automatic responses. Many learners believe they need advanced vocabulary to sound fluent, but this belief often slows them down instead of helping them. In reality, you don't need advanced words to communicate ideas effectively. What you need are familiar words, words that come automatically, without effort or translation. These are the words your brain can access quickly under pressure, during real conversations. When you try to use advanced vocabulary before it becomes automatic, your brain has to work harder. It searches, translates, checks meaning, and worries about correctness. This increases hesitation and anxiety. But when you rely on familiar words, speaking becomes lighter and faster. Your mind stays focused on meaning instead of mechanics. Familiar words create fluency because they reduce thinking time. They allow you to respond naturally, even if your sentences are simple. And simple, clear communication is always better than complex language that never comes out. As learners continue practicing with familiar words, those words become stronger and more flexible. Over time, new vocabulary naturally joins this group, not because it was forced, but because the brain was ready. This is how real fluency grows, from comfort, repetition, and confidence, not from complexity.
Another powerful technique is to use English in your internal dialogue. Talk to yourself in English during simple daily activities. Describe what you're doing. Describe what you see. This trains your brain to associate English with real life, not just textbooks.
At first, this feels uncomfortable and slow, but that discomfort means your brain is learning something new. Over time, English stops feeling like a foreign tool and starts feeling like a usable language.
This might be the hardest part. Many learners translate because they want to be correct, but fluency requires risk. You must allow yourself to be imperfect. Mistakes are not failures. They are signs that your brain is experimenting.
And every time you speak without translating, even if it's not perfect, you're building a new pathway in your brain. That pathway becomes stronger with repetition.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I want to say something very important to everyone listening. Translating in your head does not mean you're failing at English. It means you're in the middle of learning, and being in the middle is not a bad place to be. Many learners are too hard on themselves. They compare their speaking to native speakers or advanced learners and forget how far they've already come. Understanding English is already a huge achievement. Speaking fluently is simply the next stage, and it takes time.
Exactly. Fluency is not a switch you turn on one day. It's a habit your brain slowly builds. And the brain needs patience, safety, and repetition to change the way it works.
If you translate when you're nervous, that's okay. If you freeze sometimes, that's okay too. Progress is not about eliminating struggle, it's about continuing despite it.
Every time you choose to speak, even with mistakes, even slowly, you are teaching your brain that English is safe. And once English feels safe, fluency begins to grow naturally.
So instead of asking yourself, why am I still translating? Ask yourself, am I practicing enough in real situations? Because thinking in English is not something you learn by studying more rules. It's something you learn by using the language.
Speak simply, speak imperfectly, speak consistently. That's the formula.
One day, without realizing it, you'll notice something different. Words will come faster. Sentences will feel lighter. And you'll realize that you're no longer translating, you're communicating.
And when that day comes, remember, it didn't happen because you became perfect. It happened because you stayed patient and kept going.
Thank you for listening to Verba Podcast. We hope today's conversation helped you feel less alone and more confident in your English journey.
If this episode helped you, share it with another learner who might be struggling in silence.
Until next time, keep practicing and trust the process.